Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. Thank you for joining us for Close Up, Granite State Debates edition from the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College. This morning we're going to start with the governor's race. It'll be decided on Tuesday between Chris Sununu, Molly Kelly, and a few 100,000 Granite Staters. And many were no doubt watching intently on Thursday night as the candidates took on this stage and debated each other. Joining me now, John DeStaso of WMUR and Casey McDermott of NHPR, two panelists from the debate. And we're going to start with you, Casey. If you're writing the story of this debate, what's your lead?
I think it's that Molly Kelly came out swinging, or at least tried to, but the governor really had an answer for every punch that she tried to throw. I think that he was pretty confident up on this stage tonight, and that's a reflection of the ease that I think he's adopted during his time in office. I think that Senator Kelly, like I said, tried to do what she could to call attention to contrast between her and the governor, but I think did lack some specifics that people may be looking for.
How about you, John? What's the headline?
Yeah, I think the governor hit it fairly well on the head when he said about halfway through the debate that she had yet to come up with specifics. I think what Molly Kelly did and attempted to do was to draw the stark contrast just in governing philosophy. She acknowledged that she's a progressive. She pointed to corporate contributions that he's received, and in her gubernatorial campaign, she is not. She talked about briefly about education vouchers, which she of course is against, and the governor is for. So there's a real philosophical difference. The question is, you know, did former Senator Kelly really articulate it clearly enough to those undecided voters out there?
You mentioned the attack on specifics from Sununu. He picked his spots on Thursday night, and this was one where he really went for it. Let's take a look at the video.
My opponent was just asked to give any specifics, even just one, on how she would deal with the opioid crisis. Nothing. Not a single concrete answer. She was asked about fuel. Nothing. She was asked about the economy. Nothing. They asked about student debt. I've yet to hear a single idea about where we need to go, what we need to implement. You have to understand how these systems work to know how they're going to be implemented. And again, it's all about just getting the best results for the people in New Hampshire.
Senator Kelly, you can respond.
Yes, I would like to respond to that. I was a state senator for 10 years. I got things done, and I know how to get things done. So my opponent is not correct. I have put legislation together with many details. My opiate plan does have a detail as well, as I talked about. I was the first senator to put forth a renewable energy group net metering bill that has made a real difference in the state. I know how to put legislation together. I know the details. I know how it works.
It was an interesting and constant dynamic throughout this campaign. Molly Kelly defending herself with passion and yet still not providing the specifics.
Yeah, I think what we saw there was what we've seen a lot, is that she falls back on her record in the state Senate, which is a record to point to. But I think that some voters may be looking for, okay, you have that experience, but how is that specifically going to translate into what you might do in office?
Mm-hmm. And John, quickly, something that you noted right after the debate, Senator Kelly had opportunities to pick and choose attacks. One thing we didn't hear much from her on Thursday night was President Donald Trump.
We didn't hear his name spoken at all. We heard Betsy DeVos's name, the Secretary of Education, but she did not. Her campaign has been pounding on Sununu and the Democratic Party for being sort of a Trump clone or a Trump ally, and they talk about Mike Pence, the vice president, having contributed to his campaign. They're trying to tie them together. But on this stage where this was her opportunity to really try to chink the armor, so to speak, of a governor with fairly high approval ratings, she just didn't mention Donald Trump. She said afterwards that she implied it many times, which is true. But she chose not to invoke the name at all, which would surprise me.
And Casey, another interesting note here. Sometimes Governor Sununu can get himself in trouble when he starts to freelance. But tonight, or Thursday night, he really stuck to those talking points, didn't he?
He was very on message tonight. I think that he had clear things that he was able to point to. It's also worth noting that this is the last of the debates that these two have done together. And so I think that perhaps we may have seen in earlier debates a little bit more of that freelancing or off-script kind of nature. This one was definitely much more on message.
And another moment when the sparks were flying tonight was an exchange on taxes. Let's take a look at that one.
My opponent's record on taxes is very clear. She raised taxes over 50 times when she was a state senator. The LLC tax, the business taxes, a canoe tax, for goodness sakes. And her own words to the Keene Sentinel, her own words, when it comes to a sales and income tax, everything's on the table. Those are her words, not mine. And this 3%, I'd like for her to explain the 3%. Business taxes, the business tax cuts we have affected every business.
You can have 15 seconds,
What's 3%?
Senator.
Yes. I will not, and I've been clear, support a sales or income tax, and I will veto as well. Again, I believe that every time a Democrat is running against a Republican, that is the attack. It is an attack that I think people are tired of, that voters are smarter about, and I think that's why he's bringing it up.
And John, you've been watching that attack land and make a difference in campaigns dating back to the 1980s. Does it land with the same impact here in 2018 when people have a lot of different concerns now?
I think it's baked in that no one's going to support an income tax or a broad-based tax anymore. That ended, back in the early 2000s with the last pro-income tax Democrat. And ever since then, there's been that. And there have been, as we all know, many elections in which Democratic governors were elected, pledging to veto a broad-based tax, and they've been elected. They've been believable. The fact that Senator Kelly is bringing that up, it's true. That line's been tried. That whole line of attack's been tried forever. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't think that broad-based taxes are an issue really in this campaign.
Casey, you've been doing a lot of great reporting on the outside forces and groups that are at play in this race. What happens here is important, but there are a lot of other things that are pouring into this here as we count down to Election Day. Who's playing here in this race beyond just the two candidates?
Well, I think it's important to note that while Molly Kelly made a point of saying that she's not accepting PAC money or corporate money directly to her campaign, there are PACs that are supporting her independently. We have PACs like Emily's List, which supports female candidates running for office, a number of other kind of left-leaning PACs that are either supporting her or doing a lot of campaigning against Governor Sununu. And that's also an important point to make, is that while the conversation that we heard in here tonight was, I think, very local, this race, I think, is going to be swayed, at least in some part, by the national political dialogue that we're hearing right now, and how satisfied or dissatisfied people may be with the national political climate.
And John, what do you think about that dynamic in terms of, people coming in and voting essentially for or against what they see going on with President Trump?
I think it's probably more so in the congressional races, but I think there is some. It's about getting out to the polls. What's going to energize people to get out to the polls, and who's going to be energized? And I think, if you believe that Trump is energizing Democrats to come out and vote against Republicans, then I guess Molly Kelly would certainly benefit from that. But right now, we see polling which shows it within, in single digits. But can she close that gap? Again, I was surprised that she didn't bring it up. The other thing I was just going to say, and follow up to Kelly, was to Casey, sorry, was that I was surprised that the Republican Governors Association came in with such a heavy ad buy to attack Molly Kelly. Might have thought that their money might have been better spent somewhere else.
And Casey, does that indicate that maybe there's a hint of a worry here?
I think that it could be close. I don't think that this is necessarily, at this point, a landslide for the governor. I think that it's a pretty safe bet, given the kind of history of New Hampshire giving its incumbents a second term. That being said, it's really hard to predict anything in politics these days. So I think a lot of it will come down to, as John said, the ability of groups on both sides to mobilize and get their voters out.
And one thing we know from her brief statewide elected history, she overperformed expectations in September. So we'll see what happens on Tuesday.
She
John
did.
and Casey, thank you so much.